Hello my loves, I'm Miss MonMon. Welcome to my channel. Today we are embarking on a vintage sewing adventure where it's not quite a mini series, but if you are a vintage enthusiast, you will all know the feeling of the vintage that got away. Whether it be a vintage article of clothing or an object or something else, it was either too expensive, didn't fit, somewhere where you can't get to it, or sold too quickly. So that is what this is all about, sewing the vintage that got away. I know I have so many vintage pieces that I've just missed out on that still haunt my dreams. So as I was going through my computer and trying to clean out all those ridiculous amount of files and photos that I have, I came across this photo. Now, I don't know where this dress came from. I think it was originally from Couture Vintage, which means it was up on Etsy for sale at one point, and I missed out on it. It has haunted me for a while. Every time I've found these photos in my computer, I always wish that I could find this dress. And then I thought, why can't I just try to sew my own version? The amazing thing about places like Etsy, especially if you're looking for sewing inspiration, is that there are quite detailed photos of the entire dress. This one in particular has a darted bodice, a square neck collar, which is quite high up, and then a pleated skirt. She does have a lap zipper on the back and then a matching belt. So I want to see how close I can match it. Let's give it a go. This is the pattern I'm going to be using because it's got the square neckline and the collar, and I will probably end up drafting my own skirt. I've used this pattern before and it was great, so I shouldn't have any fitting issues. Now let's look at fabric. These are my two fabrics. I bought them in Kuala Lumpur almost 6 years ago, and they are scarily close to the original inspiration. Now I have 4 meters of the purple, don't judge my nails, and 3 meters of the pink, and as much as I would love to go with pink, I think having 4 meters of the purple is going to give me a little bit more wiggle room. And I guess now it's time to see what happens. So I will pass you over to VoiceOver MonMon.
Hey, it's VoiceOver MonMon here. I am excited to show you my process of making this dress. After laying out my fabric, I took my time in placing my pattern pieces to make sure that all the colored lines lined up. I am very much aware that I'm not the greatest at pattern matching, which means that it won't be super smooth in the way the lines line up, but I think this is a great way of trying out new skills. But it took me a few minutes to really cut out all my pieces, and I am happy with the way they turned out. With all my pieces cut out, a few of them, mainly the facing, needed to be interfaced. So I had a very soft interfacing. I thought I had a thicker one, but this soft one will do just fine, and all I have to do is iron that on. Now it was finally time to start sewing. The first thing the pattern instructions told me to do was to put in my stay stitches, which just helps stabilize things like the neckline, and it will stop them shifting and moving as you wear them and as you sew, because you don't want to drag fabric along the bias and sew it in, because it'll always be warped. The next thing I did was sew in all my darts, and both the front and the back needed their darts put in. So that's what I am doing here. When you are sewing darts, I like to start from the open edge and very slowly sew right up to the tip. Instead of sewing backwards to stabilize the stitch, I like to tie off the thread ends into 2 small knots and trim any excess thread. With my darts all sewn in place, I am now sewing the top of the shoulders and then starting to put together my collar. I somehow didn't get any footage of me sewing my collar together, but it was quite straightforward and just pinning the front to the side and then attach that to the back. Once I have stabilized my collar by adding a stay stitch, here I am pinning it to the front of my bodice, where I will add another basting stitch to just sort of hold it in place before I add my lining. Sometimes I like to make sure I baste things a few times. This is a step I always skipped when I was beginning to sew, but now I really see the benefits. This is me going over my basting and adding a proper stitch to attach the collar to the front and back of the bodice. Also, yes, I am wearing a hat to sew because I still don't have curtains and that sun cuts straight into my eye. So this is my sewing hat. Wearing my sewing hat, here I am attaching the front and the back to the facing and basically putting my whole bodice together. You can see this is the back section, and once this is done, all I had to do was iron it and check how it's fitting on my dress form. I was quite happy with the fit, so I think it is now time to move on to the skirt. Now with my bodice all complete, it was time to move my attention to the skirt. Grabbing my leftover fabric, I cut out panels which were 28 inches long, as that is my preferred skirt length. From my leftover fabric, I found that I could make 4 panels, which is actually my go-to skirt length. I find that this looks great when it's gathered. So with my 4 pieces together, I sewed them down the side to create one really long skirt piece. As I'm trying to stick to the original inspiration, which has a pleated skirt, I spent well over an hour tinkering with different pleating ideas and techniques, pleating everything over the top, everything tucked in, different sized pleats. But I ended up going with one of my original pleating ideas, which was a box pleat, making sure that once pleated, the pattern was still moving between the light colored purple stripe and then a dark colored purple stripe. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you watch me pleat, I pull the fabric over the top of the color in front of it, pin it, and then pull the next stripe underneath that color to create that box pleat. I used a lot of my sewing clips as well as some encouragement from Brian, who really just wanted all my attention because God forbid I do anything other than show her love and give her treats. When I was happy with my pleats, I ironed them all really flat several times, and then I took it over to my machine where I added another basting stitch. I really took my time and made sure that the pleats weren't curving or puckering, so they were nice and smooth and flat. This is also where I noticed that some pleats looked better than others, but it's all part of a learning process. With my skirt pleated, I pinned my bodice to it to see how much excess fabric I had. I ended up only going through about 3 panels, so with the leftover fabric I will unpick the basting stitch and then maybe turn it just into a cute top. It's now time to attach the skirt to the bodice. I started with a basting stitch and then went in and put in a proper stitch before I overlocked it and then gave the cat some more pets. Once the skirt was attached to the bodice and everything was overlocked, I took my time in adding a zipper. As I was making the bodice, I tried to keep in mind the way you fold the edge to add a lap zipper, but honestly it didn't work very well, so don't look too close. Then the last thing I needed to do was hem my skirt, and she was done. I think the next time I make a dress like this, I really want to add pockets, as you always need some snack holes. But I think I am really happy with how everything turned out. I could make some minor critiques in maybe the stripes from the bodice could match up better to the skirt, but in comparison to the original inspiration, I think it's pretty close, especially because you will never match the exact fabric unless you custom create and print it. But being on a fabric buying ban, that is not something I can do. But regardless, I love this dress. I really want to wear this dress a fair amount this year, and I found it easy to style. It is so comfortable. When I filmed these shots, it was 39 degrees, which is about 1,000,000,000 in Fahrenheit. And it was really nice and cool and so much fun to swish in.
I'd love to try more of this idea of finding vintage and seeing how easy it is to recreate within the realms of what I already have in my fabric stash. I've already got 2 more ideas. I will see how you guys like this one and I'll go from there. But I do have more sewing projects in the works. That is all I have time for today's vintage sewing adventure. Thank you so much for joining me and spending some time with me. I love having you guys here, so please feel free to like, comment and subscribe to the channel, as well as find me on any of my social media. I love getting to connect and chat with you guys all over there. I will be back next week with a brand new video. Not 100% sure what it is. I think I'll be doing some baking, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, I will see you guys all next week with a brand new video, but until then, be kind, be true, be you, and have a beautiful week. Bye!